decorated female naval officer is publicly humiliated by a powerful admiral drunk on authority. Before anyone can breathe, she stands up, calm as stone, and delivers the single most shocking moment the Academy has ever seen. The fallout shakes the entire military, exposes corruption, and reveals a hidden circle of silent heroes ready to protect her. A story about dignity, restraint, and the moment when justice refuses to stay silent. Before we begin this powerful story, where are you watching from today? And if you believe respect should never bow to authority, please subscribe. Your support helps bring these stories of silent heroes to life. The slap echoed through the hall not as a sharp sound, but as a suffocating silence, the kind that freezes an entire room, chokes the air, and makes time itself hesitate. People didn't gasp, they simply stopped breathing. For a fraction of a heartbeat, every officer, cadet, aide, and civilian in the Naval Academy atrium felt the world tilt into an uglier shape. Admiral Rourke's hand, still suspended mid-air, trembled with the arrogance of a man who had struck far too many people in his lifetime without consequence. His face, flushed from ego rather than effort, watched the young woman before him, waiting for her collapse, her apology, her humiliation, anything that would reaffirm his power. But Commander Alina Vale did not fall. She didn't even touch her cheek. Her chin remained steady, eyes forward, posture unbroken. The only thing that moved was a faint strand of dark hair drifting across her cheek, caught by the draft slicing through the massive hall's open doors. And that quiet, that unbearable quiet, became the first crack in the Admiral's illusion of control. Someone near the reception desk whispered, "He hit her." And someone else murmured, "She outranks half this room in combat hours." But no one stepped forward. Not yet. Elena remained motionless, not out of fear. Out of a deeper instinct, the instinct of someone who had survived far worse than a man drunk on authority. If Rourke had truly known her story, he might have hesitated before laying a hand on her. But tyrants rarely study the strength of the people they try to break. Elena, with her quiet posture and solemn gaze, carried the aura of someone carved by storms. Her ribbons, sparse yet heavy with meaning, were not the decorative kind. They belonged to people who had crawled through fire, who had saved lives while losing pieces of their own. Her left shoulder bore the faint tension of an injury long healed, but never forgotten, the kind earned not in training halls but in burning ships far from home. She was the kind of officer strangers saluted instinctively, not because of her rank, but because of her presence. And yet, here she stood, publicly slapped for disrespect. No one believed she had spoken out of line. Everyone knew the Admiral had been looking for someone, anyone, to display his dominance over. Elena simply had the misfortune of being the only person with a spine strong enough to stand upright in his presence. Years before this moment, Elena Vale had been a 23-year-old ensign assigned to the destroyer Artemis. The ship was her entire world, steel corridors, humming engines, the smell of salt clinging to uniforms, and a crew that felt more like family than colleagues. But the night she earned her first scar changed everything. The Artemis had been ambushed during a humanitarian escort mission, an attack no one had predicted, yet everyone would remember. The air filled with the metallic taste of smoke. The deck shook like a living beast in pain. Flames crawled along the walls, searching for breath to devour. Elena had sprinted through blinding heat to rescue the trapped engineering team. She tore open hatches with her bare hands, ignoring the burning metal. She carried out 3 officers, 2 conscious, 1 silent and limp. Her palms blistered, her lungs screamed, but she refused to stop. When the hull finally stabilized and the fire died, she collapsed beside the medic station, suit covering her face like war paint. Someone placed a silver emergency blanket over her shoulders, but all she felt was emptiness. She had saved 3 lives. But she had lost someone too. Lieutenant Mason Hale, her closest friend, the man who taught her how to read ocean currents, how to breathe through panic, how to steady her aim. His final words weren't heroic. They were simple, whispered as she dragged him from the flames. "Keep your honor, even when others lose theirs." She carried those words like an anchor and a compass, and on nights when sleep refused to come, she heard them again, calm, steady, resolute. The kind of words that would soon collide with an admiral who lived without honor entirely. Rourke had built a reputation on fear, not respect. He was the kind of officer who mistook silence for obedience and obedience for loyalty. Under his command, Promotions were bought with flattery and compliance, not competence. Today, during the Academy's annual leadership forum, he had singled out Alina for the simplest of reasons. She had corrected a misreported statistic in his speech. A factual correction made respectfully, with supporting documents, in front of an audience that valued truth. But tyrants do not fear mistakes, they fear witnesses, and Alina became one. Rourke approached her after the event, his voice booming through the hall as he accused her of embarrassing a superior officer. She stood still, silent, composed, neither apologizing nor challenging. That silence, calm, steady, unshaken, enraged him, and then came the slap. The room froze between them. Alina inhaled slowly, not sharply, not fearfully, but with the kind of breath warriors take before deciding whether to end a battle before it begins. She looked at Rourke with eyes that held no anger, only clarity. And that clarity terrified him more than any shout could. Behind him, 2 bodyguards shifted uncomfortably. They were trained for threats, knives, guns, sudden movements, but they had no training for the threat standing calmly before them. Rourke leaned forward. "You will apologize." Her voice emerged soft, steady, and resolute, a voice shaped by storms. "For what exactly?" A whisper, yet sharp enough to slice the tension. Someone near the staircase muttered, "He's going to explode." And he did. His hand rose again, this time higher, fueled by humiliation rather than anger. The bodyguards stepped forward in anticipation, as if bracing for chaos they couldn't predict. But the moment his wrist crossed the air, Alina moved. Not aggressively, not emotionally, but with the precision of a woman who had spent years mastering control of her body, her mind, her reactions, her restraint. Her hand caught his wrist mid-air. The room gasped for her. His eyes widened. Not in pain, not yet, but in disbelief. He had never been stopped before. Not by anyone. Certainly not by someone he assumed was beneath him. "Alana," someone whispered in awe, but she wasn't listening to them. She tightened her grip, not enough to injure, just enough to reveal a truth he had never faced. He was not invincible. And then, with one calm pivot of her foot and a controlled twist of her wrist, she redirected his momentum. The Admiral crashed onto the marble floor. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't revenge. It was balance, transferred, redirected, controlled. And the impact knocked him unconscious. The bodyguards froze. Not because they feared her strength, but because they suddenly understood she had been holding back far more than he had been giving. Military investigations move slowly, unless the wrong person is humiliated in public. Rourke's allies tried to contain the story, but news has a way of escaping the walls built to trap it. By nightfall, Alina was escorted, not arrested, to a private conference chamber. Not by security. By 2 silent officers wearing discreet insignias she recognized immediately. They were part of a network few spoke about. The kind formed by veterans who had watched corruption rise and had quietly prepared for a reckoning. Inside the chamber sat Admiral Nguyen, a man known for fairness so rare it was spoken of as legend. At his side was Captain Aaron Hale, brother of the man Alina had lost on the Artemis. The sight of him struck her like a cold, distant wave, but his expression softened. "Alana," Aaron said gently, "you didn't do anything wrong." A sentence so simple, yet no one had told her that in years. Admiral Nguyen slid a folder toward her. "Rourke has a documented history of abuse, bribery, falsified reports, and assault. We've been building a case for months." Alina blinked slowly. "Why me?" "Because," Nguyen replied, "when a bully hits 100 people, the world shrugs. But when he hits the one person who can't be intimidated, the world finally pays attention." Aaron added, "Your silence today spoke louder than any accusation." She lowered her gaze, remembering the slap, the fall, the room full of people who had watched in helpless anger. Nguyen leaned back. Rourke awakened the wrong storm. A board of inquiry was assembled, fast, brutally efficient, and fully transparent. Rear admirals, senior captains, and legal officers sat in solemn rows as witnesses recounted what they had seen. Rourke attempted to claim Alina had attacked him unprovoked, but video footage from 6 different angles made his lies crumble. The footage showed his aggressive advance, his raised hand, the slap, Alina's stillness, his second attempt, the controlled defensive maneuver that took him down. A senior officer watching the video whispered, "That was restraint. She could have broken him." And that truth spread through the room like wildfire. When Alina was called to speak, she walked with the same calm she had held in the atrium. She did not defend herself emotionally. She did not accuse him of cruelty. She merely stated, in simple, steady words, what had happened. Rook refused to face her. His eyes stayed fixed on the table, as though looking at her would crumble whatever illusion of superiority he had left. At the end of her testimony, Nguyen asked her calmly, "Commander, do you regret your actions?" The room held its breath. Elena answered in a voice soft enough to be prayer and hard enough to be stone. "I regret that I had to use force, but I do not regret standing up for my dignity. Honor means nothing if it only exists in silence." Her words struck the board with the force of a truth no one could ignore. One of the admirals murmured, "That's a line for history." Another whispered, "That's the kind of officer we need." Before the final verdict, Nguyen addressed the rooms. When authority becomes louder than integrity, it is the quiet ones who save the institution. And later, Aaron Hale placed a steady hand on Elena's shoulder and told her, "Strength isn't measured by the battles you win, Elena. It's measured by the battles you refuse to let define you." These sentences would be repeated across naval forums, training modules, leadership conferences, and military academies for years to come. The verdict arrived in a silent hall heavy with anticipation. Rourke was stripped of rank, stripped of command, stripped of the power he had wielded like a weapon. The audience, officers, cadets, civilians, rose in a unified gesture of respect. Not for him, for her. Every person stood, not because they were ordered to, but because dignity, when displayed with such quiet power, demands acknowledgement. Elena did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply bowed her head, honoring not herself, but the institution she still believed in, the one her friend Mason had died protecting. After the hearing, as she stepped outside the massive hall, a breeze lifted her hair the same way it had in the atrium. But this time, the silence around her was not fear, it was admiration. A group of young cadets waited by the gate. One finally asked, voice trembling, "Commander, how did you stay so calm?" Elena paused, searching for the truth she could offer them. "Because," she said gently, "violence is easy, but dignity is a discipline." And the cadets nodded, as though they understood something no textbook had ever taught them. In a world full of loud power, silent strength is often overlooked, but respect is not something granted by rank or demanded by arrogance. It's earned through integrity, through patience, through courage that doesn't need an audience. Commander Elena Vale's story reminds us that even in the darkest hall of injustice, one person with unshakable dignity can change the entire room. Where are you watching from today? And what part of this story struck you the most? If stories of silent heroes inspire you, make sure to subscribe, share your thoughts, and join a community that believes honor should always stand taller than fear.